So we just got The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 6, Chapter 22 by Bryce Dallas Howard. Right off the bat, I've got to say this episode was very different, not just for The Mandalorian, but also for a Star Wars TV show. There was some stuff I absolutely adored, but there were some things that didn't quite sit right with me. That's just my opinion though, and I will get into some of those in this video. The ending to some extent moved the plot forward, and Bo-Katan is with the Darksaber once again on a technicality to do with what took place in the mines of Mandalore. And as adorable as Grogu is, I do have worries he's just going to be reduced to a cute MacGuffin because I can't see where his story is going. But first things first, let's start at the beginning. Let's dive into the breakdown. No more jibber jabber. Here we go. As we learned in Chapter 17, Bo-Katan's Night Elves have separated from her and became mercenaries. Woves is their new leader. Both he and Koska Reeves appeared in this episode. It was so cool to see Sasha Banks again. Now the start of the episode shows them on one of their missions, pursuing a Quarren freighter. Captain Shuggoth, a female Quarren captain, is in love with the son of a Mon Calamari viceroy. This son, a prince, is aboard the Quarren ship. And by the way, did you know he's voiced by Tom Holland's brother Harry? The Mandalorians are hired to bring the calamari back to his parents, who disapprove of Mon Cala and Quarren love. The two species are known to live harmoniously alongside one another on Mon Cala, but they do have tensions that go back 4,000 years. Woves mentions they have to make this quick though, because they have a contract waiting for them on Plaisir 15, which is where Bo, Din and Grogu are heading. She's trying to get a fleet and Night Elves back, which took her a long time to assemble. Plaisir 15 is the green planet we saw in the trailers, which looks like it's got Mandalorian architecture. It's an independent outer rim planet which values democracy. Bo and Din are then auto-piloted to their docking slip, where they're greeted by an Imperial Protocol and astromech droid who look very similar to Dr. Aphra's droids, but I will say they're noticeably different. This was just a really cool visual reference. There are a lot of droids in this episode, so get ready. Now, as they enter the Hyperloop, they're told that according to the Coruscant Accords, they aren't allowed to access the Defense Forces without explicit permission from the High Senate, and then they're asked for their chain codes, which identify specific biometric details, for example, their ancestry. We first saw this in Chapter 14, when Boba Fett showed his to Din. Bo and Mando are requested by the leaders of the planet, who turn out to be Jack Black and Lizzo, two people I never would have expected in a Star Wars show. As much as I like Jack Black, it took me out of the story a little bit. The aesthetics of the dining room were fine, but that combined with the dresswear was very Marvel and less Star Wars. But you know what? World building is important. We see many alien guests at the table, including more frogs. Bryce Dallas Howard directed this episode, and many of the same species we saw in a Season 2 episode, Chapter 11, came back. At the table we also see Ithorians, Solustans, which is 9 Num species, Rhodians, Ishi-Tibs, Snivians, and Biths. And they're all drinking, and I feel like throwing up saying this, secretions of a slimy creature in a tank. Now, Jack Black's character, Captain Bombardier, was a former Imperial, a facilities planning officer during the war, and just like Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, he was part of the New Republic's Amnesty program, but stationed on Plaisir 15. After his rehabilitation to the so-called good guys, he rebuilt Plaisir 15 and fell in love with the daughter of the nobles on that world, Lizzo's character, the Duchess. And it's important to note, her family were once separatists. But Bo and Din don't care. They want to speak with the hired Mandalorians, Woves and her former Night Elves, who are hired as special forces to protect the planet. There is one condition they must fulfill though, and that is helping them with their droid problem. Many droids, remnants of the CIS during the Clone Wars, like B-1 battle droids and super battle droids, have gone rogue. They were reprogrammed for peace, but have instead been malfunctioning. From traffic accidents to heavy equipment failures, the droids are not functioning as they should, and the Royals want our heroes to help them, because the other Mandalorians they hired and military are not allowed inside the city. But with Bo and Din, they're guests, and as for their weapons, those are part of their religion, so there's a loophole that they can accept them. And there is an added bonus, an incentive if our heroes help. Plaisir 15 would recognise Mandalore as a sovereign system. And speaking of droids, we do see a couple of familiar faces from the Book of Boba Fett. the LEP series service droid, and the chef droid. And also KP-1, a fan-built droid for the Kenobi show, appeared in this episode at the bar. Now the irony throughout the episode is that Din's parents were destroyed by super battle droids and he hates them, and now he's the one chasing them down. Now even though Din has come a long way trusting R2-D2 and R5, he still has an underlying distrust of droids. Now going forward in the episode, Grogu is left with the Duchess, and he helps her to win at their game by using the Force. Grogu is becoming more confident, but he's certainly been sidelined so often this season, and honestly, I can't see where his story is going. At the security station, we see Christopher Lloyd's character. He is a former Separatist and the one who ends up being responsible for the rogue programming. Later in the episode when he's arrested, he name drops Count Dooku and the Jedi, and he says Dooku was a visionary. He expresses his anger towards the Empire and the Republic, and having lived on Plazir 15 for so many years and witnessing what the planet became, he is vengeful, but first of all, he sends Bo and Din to the Ugnaughts in the lower levels. We get a very Bespin-like sequence from The Empire Strikes Back of Ugnaughts in servitude fixing droids, ones who, by the way, might be able to help Din later on get an IG memory circuit that the Anzellans didn't have. But they won't listen to our heroes until Din name drops Kuiil, who clearly they knew once upon a time and had a great respect for. We saw him in season 1 on Arvala 7. Rest in peace, Kuiil. And I do find it quite amusing that just like him, they all say I have spoken. So Mando and Bo investigate at the docks, and after Mando triggers a super battle droid to malfunction, proving the problem, they chase him, and on the droid, they find a spark pad with the name of a droid bar, the Resistor. They find out the reason the droids are malfunctioning is Nepenthe overriding their programming. Now it's worth noting that some of their original programming to kill is still there, originally manufactured by the Techno Union, which again is a callback to the prequels and the Clone Wars. These droids were requisitioned by the security office, which is illegal and goes back to Commissioner Helgait, Christopher Lloyd's character. He's arrested and exiled, and he used the famous line spoken by Boba to Koska in season 2 and Cad Bane to Boba in the Book of Boba Fett, if that isn't the Quactor calling the Stifling slimy. Grogu gets knighted as part of the Ancient Order of Independent Regencies, and Bo-Katan gets the key to Plazir. Now while this seems very mundane and maybe not too important, it might come back to be in the future, especially when Thrawn reveals himself. Whether that's in The Mandalorian or the Ahsoka show, I think having this planet as an ally will be important. Our episode ends with Bo-Katan confronting her old crew, and she challenges Axe Woves, who does not deem her a rightful Mandalorian leader. Even though Bo is victorious, Axe points out she needs the Darksaber, that is what's most important, so Din yields it once again, but notes he's not handing it to her, which she doesn't want, so this time she wants to win it rightfully, but it turns out she already did. In the Mines of Mandalore, she used it to combat and defeat Din's captor, the spider droid in the mines. Now she's technically the rightful ruler, which Axe Woves and the other Mandalorians acknowledge and agree with. And so Din gives it to her, she ignites it, and our episode ends. The plots did move forward to some extent, but it's really not got where it should be with 2 episodes to go. I assume Moff Gideon is going to be revealed in the next episode, but with Bo-Katan now back with her old fleet and her Night Owls, is she now going to recruit more Mandos before the big finale? Now as we know, Bo-Katan has a long and complicated history with the Darksaber. In Star Wars Rebels, Sabine Wren, who won the Darksaber in combat against Gar Saxon, thought that Bo-Katan would be a better leader, and so she handed it to her. The first time Bo-Katan accepted it, but she lost it to Moff Gideon. Either he stole it or won it in combat, we don't know, prior to the events of season 1, and then of course Mando won it from Gideon in combat. Din tried handing it to Bo and she refused. She knew the mistake she made in the past, so she didn't just want to be handed it, and so in this episode, knowing that she won it rightfully in chapter 18 is a huge step, because combined with possibly taming the Mythosaur, she has everything she needs to rule Mandalore. But where does this leave Din? That's my question. But for this one, guys, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It wasn't my favourite episode, there were some things I loved, but generally speaking, it was stylistically very different. But what did you guys think? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always.